Well, many thanks indeed for staying with us. This is Business Nigeria. Wherever you're watching from around the world, we are live from Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. Let's get into our second conversation now, shall we? The Nigerian economy continued on a positive trajectory, growing for the seventh consecutive quarter since the COVID-19 induced recession recorded in the third quarter of 2020. The growth recorded in the past 2 years is following significant expansionary monetary policies by the Central Bank of Nigeria, keeping the monetary policy rate at 11.5%. Now, according to the latest gross domestic product report for the second quarter of 2022, released by the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria's economy grew by 3.54% year-on-year in real terms, recording an improvement compared to the 3.11% growth recorded in the previous quarter. The aggregate real GDP stood at 17.29 trillion naira in the second quarter of 2022, a marginal decline of 0.37% when compared to 17.35 trillion naira recorded in Q1 2022, with non-oil sector leading the growth rates. To give us more insights and perspective to this development, I'm being joined from Southampton in the United Kingdom by a chartered economist and chief executive officer of the Honey Trade Academy, Mr. Samson Shoebi. He joins me live now. Thank you so much, Samson, for agreeing to speak with us here on Business Nigeria. Such a delight to see you again.
Yeah, same here. I'm happy to join you live here. And I want to say thank you for having me.
I'll engage you very briefly about what is playing out in the UK, which is also experiencing serious inflation rate, the highest in many, many decades. But let's get things started here in the country, Nigeria, about this growth recorded the seventh consecutive quarter. I wonder what this translates to, especially when you compare this growth to that of the previous quarter.
Yes. So for me, honestly, I won't say Nigeria is doing badly at all, because when you compare Nigeria with countries like the United Kingdom or the United States of America, for example, the United States of America in the same quarter did about 0.5%. You know, it shrank. The economy actually shrank in the second quarter by about 0.9%, which is from 1.6% to 0.5%. If you also take United Kingdom, you also see a growth rate of about 0.8%, which is even less than 1%. So that tells you that this is this low growth rate, you know, is a global phenomenon, and it's occasioned by largely by the war in Ukraine. Now, if you look at Nigeria as a society, you find out that 3.54 is not so bad, you know, even though there are indications we could do better. Now, you break it down. What does economic growth rate, what does it tell you? It actually just shows leadership, decision-taking procedure, what sector to focus on for growth, for improved growth, and what sector to exchange, you know. So the economic growth is supposed to expose, which is what, as we can see, I'm sure a lot of people don't even know that transportation could do as much as we are seeing now, like communication. This TikTok, Facebook contribution to the economy could be that massive. But that is what we are seeing today. Even the oil that we always thought was the only opportunity we've got, only resources we've got, you can see now that it's doing barely 6% of our GDP as of today. So normally, economic growth is supposed to expose us to realization and also to help our planning towards the following year. So we can say, okay, how do we carry on with our budgeting? What sector should we focus on? And I keep telling people talk about the economy as being very, very bad. Yes, the economy, people are not feeling the impact of the economy as of today. But then that's as the result of the fact that the size of our economy is so small. I don't know if you're listening. It's so small. So if you, for example, if you take United States of America for an example, the size of the economy per capita in GDP is running to about $69,000 per person, whereas that of Nigeria is just about $2,400. So people won't really feel the impact of that economic growth as they should if they put themselves in comparison with someone living in the US. Even though the US might be doing a lower economic growth rate, But then the impact of that lower economic growth rate because of the size of their economy, impacts that society a lot more than societies like Nigeria. So it's not a bad thing. The growth is good. It shows that yes, there are activities, there are activations in sectors that were never even imagined. But then, how do we consolidate on this economic growth? How do we expand it? How do we make sure that we maximize the potentials of this society? I think that should be the next phase of this conversation. And I'm happy that the government has been consistent. This is the 7th time we are having consistent economic growth. That is good for the society.
All right, so we'll speak about how these policies can be sustained and, of course, your recommendations as a professional. But let's discuss this issue of the Central Bank of Nigeria raising interest rates twice in 2 months to combat the rising cost of goods and services and commodities. However, the issue of inflation, of course, is also biting really hard. I wonder what sense you make of this.
Yes, so when GDPs are calculated, you are supposed to regularize it with inflation rates. For example, there are 3 parameters through which you can calculate GDP. You can either use the income, you can use the output approach, or you can use the expenditure approach. I do not know which approach the MBS has used to do their calculations, but then if Nigeria actually has good data, whatever parameter you use, you should arrive at a single digit. It means whatever approach you took, the results should be the same. Now, if the normalization of that GDP has been done, automatically they will have taken into cognizance the inflationary rate, and that will not be, be shown in this figure we are seeing. But then, because Nigeria doesn't have so much data, we have data lapses. A lot of loopholes exist in the society. So this figure we are seeing is not in itself the entirety. For example, if you say the GDP of this country was calculated based on income, does the government have the full figure of all the incomes of us, of everyone in the country? That is a lie. There are so many persons who generate income in this country, but their figures were never captured. So, but then the inflation of the country continues to stick at 19%, which means that if you had 10,000 naira in the previous year and you had about 19% now of increase, automatically the cost of goods will have increased by about 20%, which is what we see today. You go to the market, you want to buy a candle or a good, the price previously was a particular amount, now it has changed. All of these things also have a resultant effect on the GDP eventually, because then income actually increase. If I was selling 100 products of a particular item before now, and the price changed by about 50%, automatically the income I'm going to make on those products will increase by 50%. So it also has a resultant effect on the GDP, but then it is expected that those doing these calculations will have been able to, reconcile all these inflationary effects that is supposed to have on the GDP outcome, So that's on one side. The other angle to it is the fact that there is a wide gap between the rich and the poor in Nigeria. So when you see income being increased, a lot of economic activities being done, you find out that those above the average are doing a lot more economic activities than those at the lower cadre. So if you look at the number of funds that is being transacted with people who are rich in Nigeria, and their affordability is totally different from those who are totally poor. It's a government responsibility to ensure that government bridge this gap and make sure that there is the gap between the poor and the rich is actually bridged somehow, brought so close, so that you don't have that wide margin any further. And if that is done, we cannot begin to, people who are at the lower cadre can begin to have a feel of this economic impact, because then increase in economic growth is supposed to lead to employment, because then when GDP increases, production is expected to also increase. And when production increases, what it means is that there will be more persons that will be available to work. and be needed for production. So that's supposed to reduce unemployment in the society. Earnings and disposable income are also supposed to increase for people.
Right.
People should be able to buy more, because then when the GDP increases, what it means is that the per capita income of individuals are also supposed to increase. But then you might not have this run across the whole country, because the distribution of wealth in our country today is not even. You know, some people are massively rich.
Yes,
some people
Mr.
are
Sampson,
massively poor.
Yes, Mr. Sampson,
yes,
I have to squeeze in as many questions as possible because I know how and understand how busy your schedule is. But while we celebrate and perhaps commend this administration for this growth, the seventh consecutive growth quarterly, how can we perhaps do a direct comparison with the fact that Madam Minister Zainab Ahmed had at some point said that Nigeria is broke? So just how broke are we perhaps?
Nigeria is broke because if you look at the debt ratio of Nigeria to our revenue, you find out that we don't have any funds at all to spend. But the welfare, that's what I'm saying, that the economic growth does not necessarily translate to improved welfare. It is expected that economic growth is supposed to translate to improved welfare of the society, but that is not the way it works out. What improves the economic welfare of any society is the GDP per capita income. GDP per capita, that is the amount of that share of the total production that comes to everyone. When you look at what is coming to Nigeria, you find out that even the economy of Nigeria is shrinking. It's shrinking compared to other societies.
Yes, I mean, just a moment again, because we have to go now. How can we fix that? How can we ensure that this translates to the average Nigerian, the common man on the streets?
We need to increase the size of our economy. Nigeria needs to take advantage of our comparative product, which is petroleum. If you look at it, petroleum only contributed about 6% to this GDP. Nigeria can do a lot better. We need to do a lot more. The government needs to create enabling environment to private sector to thrive. You can see that services contributed about 50% to this GDP. If there is enabling environment to these youth that are contributing this production, they can do a whole lot more. Nigeria needs to combat insecurity in the society. If you look at the contribution of agriculture will actually contribute a whole lot more, and transportation. But because of security issues in the society, these industries and sectors couldn't do more than what they've done. So if the government is smart enough, they will combat security and make sure that all these wars with Boko Haram, with banditry, are put to stop. And then investors will come in and take advantage of this, vibrant economy and these vibrant sectors. And at the same time, the government needs to ensure that they build trust in investors. I believe with all of that. And also, the oil and gas sector needs to be taken advantage of. That is, as of today, that is a comparative product. We can do a whole lot more with that industry. We are doing barely 1.4 million barrels per day at this moment, every month, on a daily basis, whereas the budget was projected for 1.8. It means we're having budget deficit on a daily basis that's going to accrue over the years. So we can do a whole lot more. I think the government has a whole lot on their table at this moment. But this is really, really good for Nigeria. It tells us that there is hope in our society.
Yeah, and we hope that this, of course, is sustained, especially with a transitional phase just around the corner. Fascinating insight. Mr. Sampson Shoebi, of course, is a chartered economist and chief executive officer, Honey Trade Academy. Thank you so much for speaking with us from the United Kingdom.
Thank you so much for having me.